and welcome to ManchTalk. I'm Tammy Simmons, and I'm your host, and my phone's ringing like crazy.
Hi, and I'm Carla Garrick, and I am your co-host, and my phone is doing Facebook Live.
And I think my laptop is doing Facebook Live, but who knows? And maybe you don't have sound. Hopefully this is live. Today is Tuesday, September 8th. It is primary election day, and I figured if we should get back in the habit. We've been saying we've got to get back to the live feed thing, and
yes,
this was a good reason.
Today is important for the people at home. You will probably miss this, but for the folks online, obviously, please come out and come support your fellow Republicans and friends down the ticket. I am running in District 20, so that's Goffstown and Manchester wards 3, 4, 10, and 11. There was a really good turnout. I was up at Goffstown for most of the morning.
Yeah.
I was at Bartlett's, and it was a steady, busy street.
Yeah.
First time that people were actually saying hi and
Yeah.
knowing who I was.
Yeah.
So that felt good because that felt like
You've made headway.
I've done some work.
You did the things.
Yeah, and I'm not, I got to go from 42% to 51%. So, people are going to have to come out and support me.
Dan and I are lucky we didn't have a primary election, which allows me to be very lazy today and not go to the polls.
And everyone is missing, Tammy's super fancy little mats and her soup and her tents and her...
it's like camping. I don't do the roughing.
Right.
I just don't. If I've got to spend 13 hours at the polls, I'm going to be comfortable. And I ask the people who volunteer for me, I would expect them to be comfortable.
In fact, I was at a function and the person who was doing the announcements was laying it on very thick in terms of, I think, his first poll standing experience ever was in Ward 10 with Tammy. And so he has this delusional sense of how it works.
Yeah.
He was like, they're heated pad, and you get soup, and there's a tent, and there's and it was like,
no,
not at my 6 polling stations.
No, definitely not today. Anyways,
barely...
it's going to be like 87. I saw that this morning because at first I thought, Jesus, it looks a little cloudy out. I hope it's not crappy. And then it said, mostly sunny. And I know you're reconnecting. Who knows? Okay. Mostly sunny and 87. So if you're out there at the polls holding a sign for somebody you support, which I'm going to make a shameless plug. So besides your race, the only other primary race that I've really had a vested interest in for because of people I know. So I obviously want Republicans to win in November, but there's usually only a handful of cases in the primaries that really are. And for me, it's in the congressional race in CD1. If you live in CD1 and you're not sure who to vote for, you have the choice between Matt Mowers and Matt Mayberry. I strongly urge you to cast your vote for Matt Mayberry. He has done more.
I love that you're loyal.
Yeah,
and he's
boots
really,
on the ground.
Yeah.
He is a boots on the ground. Yeah. Do what's got to get done to get the Republican candidates elected. And that's not an easy thing to do because sometimes you're pushing for somebody that you maybe aren't 100% aligned with. But when you're dedicated to the cause, just like, what we say with Liberty, when you're dedicated to the cause, you just have to get all in and do it. So if you're in CD1 and you haven't cast your ballot yet, Matt Mayberry, if you have any questions, if you're not sure, you can call him directly, 603-969-7077. That's his cell phone number.
Wow.
He'll answer. He'll convince you that you should vote for him today. And good luck to you, Matt. Good luck to you. You'll be fine. You'll be fine.
I hope so.
It's just weird. I hate that feeling. Even when you know it's going to be fine, it's the most annoying feeling in the world.
Well, I'm actually trying to approach this in a very sort of just balanced, laissez-faire. I've done the work that is necessary to this point. It's sort of beyond one's control, and I think out of Jack and I am by far a better candidate, and I clearly think I'm better than Lou too, and I think maybe folks are ready for a change. So I'm feeling cautiously optimistic, and I'll probably have to eat gruel next week.
No. So this past weekend was Labor Day.
It was indeed.
Which is, that last weekend of summer, which it was really, really nice. Dan,
it was beautiful.
Dan and I kayaked yesterday.
Oh, did you? Yeah, we went out on the trails and we saw, actually we were down at Namaske.
Yeah.
And I saw a bunch of people on the paddle boards,
yeah.
right? And I was like, oh, I want to learn that next, I think. It's supposed to be really good for your core.
It is. We went up to Mount William Pond, which is in Ware.
Okay.
And we had my friend Whitey, who lives up on Rockland Avenue, is a supporter, told us about it recently when we were talking with him, and we checked it out. It was nice. It was very small, which is nice. Do the perimeter, had lunch in the middle of the water, and came back home. But anyways, it's Labor Day, and people think of it just as a summer holiday weekend, and the start of Labor Day came from the labor movement. It's not it's not a summer holiday to them. And I watched bits of a video by Mark McKenzie, who wants to run against Ted Gatzis for executive council, which is probably not what we need, since he was the former president of the AFL-CIO. I don't know if that's what we need at the executive council level, but he talked about, the labor movement and how wonderful the labor movement is and how they brought us all these things today, and we wouldn't have Labor Day without, you wouldn't enjoy this weekend if it wasn't for the labor movement, which is a bit much.
Labor Day is an international holiday, isn't it? And it literally is a communist holiday.
Yes. So I thought the irony that here, this former AFL-CIO president who would like to dictate your life in government was talking about the labor movement and how wonderful they are, just days after we learn that the labor movement, the police union, is going to basically force the Manchester taxpayers to spend probably at least $150,000 of your money. It doesn't come from some secret pool, from some insurance money. This is money that could be spent elsewhere. This is money that could go towards books in classrooms, or cleaning up the parks, or raises for, I don't know, some group that doesn't get raises or whatever. For those of you who want.
There are no such groups.
I know, but I'm just saying, do you really think this is the best use of $150,000? So the backstory, because I don't know if everybody really remembers. The short backstory is former police detective Aaron Brown was fired by former chief Nick Willard back in, I believe he was fired in 2019.
He was fired in 18.
Okay. Yep. So he was fired in the middle of 2018, or maybe 3 months into it, 3-4 months into it. And this stemmed from, this week's story is, the union filed a grievance. And the union said, no, he shouldn't have been fired. And they went round and round. And the arbitrator, which is binding, said, no, he should have only been suspended for 30 days. And the union is forcing the city to rehire this man and pay him his back wages. Now, what did he do? Well, in the short story, because it's timely and it's in the news, he made really racist comments. He's a police officer, and he made really racist comments, and that was
in writing, on text,
yes,
unequivocally, very clearly. There's written evidence. No one disputes that it was said.
Right.
So that part is
that's the story you read in today's paper. But for those of you like me who tend to remember things, I just did a little Google. Aaron Brown, Manchester Police. Back in January of 2019, there was an article in the Union Leader, because you, the taxpayers, already spent $45,000 of your tax money because of this. Because the woman that this cop was forcing to have sex.
So just to back up, so the same officer, Aaron Brown, the arbitration it's circling sort of around the racist comments, but the actual thing where it started, and I recall when this happened, obviously I'm a police accountability person, so I pay attention, and I like to see when, swift action is taken. And I recall when this happened, I was very impressed by Chief Willard.
Because he did
I was like,
this is
what?
Wrong,
that
and
never happens.
That's right.
And I was like, wow, okay, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps you are less just stuck in your ways and protecting your own.
So this story from this article, just so that I don't misspeak, he was a street level detective, And there was actually an investigation of a different officer, and then it led to the investigation of him because, you start peeling back those layers of the onion and you find all sorts of things. This woman claimed that in 2009, Aaron Brown, the guy we're going to pay $150,000, give or take, coerced her and another woman to show him their breasts in order to secure bail and prevent him from notifying their probation officers of potential violations. He is then alleged to have called her frequently, showing up at her house in uniform, buying her drinks, and demanding that she has sex with him. Now, keep in mind, this is a married man with 2 children who is a cop, who, I'm sorry, if you're a cop, you're supposed to be there's a caliber of human that I think you need to be. And we have this cop who's forcing women to do things and promising them that I won't turn you in if you do these things. And, I won't tell my wife and I won't teach this to my children. And then he went on, then you get into the racist parts. And there was, because Chief Capano was like outraged that this decision was made. He went as far as to joke about shooting blacks in his text messages. He said, "Besides, I got this new fancy gun. Take out parking tickets, no problem. FYI, parking tickets equals black fella." Brown texted his wife in 2017 when she was worried about him working on a case in Boston. 2 months later, he sent his wife a video of a crack bunny fight and wrote, "I am certainly not a racist. I have my I can never say this right. Thank you. About people. But these folks are straight up ends. No 2 ways about it. Wow. Serve no place in life or society, yet they're completely taking over all parts of our daily life. I'm sorry. This is not the quality of person that should be a police officer."
So let's talk a little bit about why this is happening and maybe what we can do about it, right? So basically the police chief who worked with him, fired him, did not want him on the force. The current police chief, who by the way is
retiring now
at the end of this month. I would be curious, and I think this does feed into the rest of it.
I think so too.
All these police chiefs come in and they serve exactly 3 years. The reason for that is the union contracts, because you get pension tagged to your last 3 years, highest last 3 years of salary. So, the fact that no one actually stays 1 extra day and gets to retire when they're still in their 40s seems like a pretty sweet deal. So that probably goes in that basket with the union issue. And then, so one police chief fired him. The next police chief does not want him. The taxpayers should not want this guy, and we should not have to pay for this. So why, one, is there binding arbitration? Why are we being forced to do things that we don't want to do?
Right. Who in this scenario, other than this bad cop, actually wants this? The union and the cop.
Right. And I don't know. When we talk about police reform and sort of the challenges that I was so outraged by all of this. I've just been sharing it all over social media with air quotes around the word reform, right?
Right.
So we had such a huge opportunity in the past 3 months to really go, wow, I think everyone agrees there's a problem. Can we solve this? And then these kinds of things happen, and it takes away all my trust in anyone doing the right thing. Well, so, is this something we can fix through legislation? Do we have to bust the union?
Well, here's the thing. I don't know how you bust the unions, because when you talk to people, think about it. A large number of the people who are actually casting votes for for me and you or whoever are actually in these unions. So it is very, very hard in a city like Manchester. But I just want reasonable things. The pensions make me crazy because I agree. We pay people based on their highest 3 years. And the reason that's a problem is because we have a defined benefit retirement system as opposed to a defined contribution. So for the rest of us, regular people,
us plebeians,
what happens is we pay into our retirement funds. We pay into our 401ks or our IRAs or whatever we do. And yes, in those highest 3 years of our salaries, we're also probably paying in a larger amount because we can afford to. But when we retire, when we say, everybody has the right to retire. There's no rule that you have to work till you're 60 or 65. But if I choose to retire prior to a certain age,
64. So in some ways, you in the private sector are forced to
I'm
work
going to be
till you're
penalized
64.
if I take that money early. So it encourages people to not dip into retirement funds until they're above retirement age.
And also encourages private people to continue to work.
Stay in the workforce and
to stay in the workforce and to provide. But then on the flip side, when we being the state, gets to write their own rules, they're like, oh, you know what? It seems reasonable that we should let people retire when they're 48, which I think is how old Chief Capano is. He's young. I mean, he's young looking.
And
I think he's probably my age.
I do know. And then
they go double dip. So now he's going to get this salary like Chief Willard did. Chief Willard resigned and then went and worked for, what was it?
I think for ICE or something,
or Homeland Security, or
the problem
some other
is that
Nazi
I don't really blame Chief Capano for wanting to leave at this juncture, because, I mean, admittedly, being a chief of police is probably a miserable job right now.
I wouldn't want to be it right now with this Aaron Brown story
and with all the protests and people being, I'm okay with protesting bad actions by police, but I mean, we all see the videos. There's videos of cops who are writing, a parking ticket and get brick thrown at their head. Not okay. So if he wanted to say, I'm done, that's fine, but you shouldn't be able to get your retirement money. Because because it's defined benefit, we have to pay it, whether it never runs out.
That's, it astounded me. I was down in South Carolina a couple of years ago visiting my parents, and I met this gentleman, the sweetest old guy, but he drove a really fancy sports Corvette, and I was like, oh, that's a nice car. And we got to chatting, and he mentioned, he had been a firefighter in New York City. He worked for 20 years, and he's been on retirement for 48 years.
And even if it's only
I'm like, that is not sustainable.
No. It's math. This is math, folks.
It's like money in, money out.
Old-time pensions, if you go back to, the 60s or the 70s, pensions were, you retired at 65 and, you died at 73.
Well, you see,
and that was it.
See, that's another interesting thing. I was trying to think with all this virus stuff and sort of the outcomes and what are we going to see from this. I think one of the things that saddens me the most is that we've it's somehow become acceptable to just kind of leave, your family members, the elderly, in the home, and we've sort of broken that relationship where you can go and be with your loved ones, especially in hospice when they're passing and those kinds of things. And I find it upsetting because I was like, I hope it's not sort of intentional, in the sense that as we move to more socialized medicine, one of the things people don't want to recognize and don't want to understand, but it is true, is that socialized medicine means people have to make hard choices. Yes. And a lot of times they will actually choose to not prolong your life, right?
Because it's not a good investment.
Right. And so, I'm concerned that by taking family members out of the mix in these areas, it might actually create an incentive for people to kind of, just help people along a little faster.
Yeah.
And I know that happened in New York State during this thing. That they can actually, there is a study that can show, it wasn't just the COVID, it was
the way they reacted.
Yeah.
I saw a thing on Facebook. It was a picture of a plane with one of those banners, and it says Cuomo killed Nana.
Oh wow!
And they were flying it over a beach, and I was like, "Ee."
It's not untrue. If you want to look at propaganda, you have to ask yourself, why is everyone saying New York did it right?
No,
and I'm like, New York
killed off all sorts of people
wrong.
Poorly.
Yeah,
really, really poorly.
So what can we do about this? What do you think? Should people demand that, should he do a petition, a letter writing campaign? What else could he do if they're saying, sexually coercing someone, being a racist is not enough to get you fired, then what is a fireable offense?
I do think this comes down to, because it's like, what can I do? I don't really know that I can do anything. I can talk about it. But the problem is that there are, and I'm not saying it's all cops, because it's not. there are police who act poorly. There are people who are in positions of power, because that's what police are. They have a position of power, who shouldn't. Who maybe don't, some people don't have the appropriate training. Some people haven't had their backgrounds looked into. There's not enough internal accountability. There definitely is not enough transparency. We see this all the time. We don't even know who's on this Lori's list that says,
but we put together the task force that had almost only law enforcement on it. And the task force came back with close to zero reforms. We're in worse position than we were before it started.
So you have to, the pressure really has to be from the public on the actual police, I think.
But here's my question, though. Because of the union contracts, can they just fire him for no cause?
No.
No, right?
No.
So and coercing someone for sex and being a racist, not grounds for. So what is grounds for
murder?
For
I don't know.
Legitimate dismissal.
I have no idea. I look at this and somebody could say,
and we have to pay back pay, by the way, too. No. So forget about the $150,000.
No, that's probably the back pay.
That probably, with the lawyer's fees and the insurance that's going to go up and everything, is probably easily
I do know. I went back and looked just to get an idea. So in 2018, which is the year we fired him, we paid him $33,000. Now, I looked the most recent year that I could see what his salary was in 2016. He was making $70,000 a year. So by 2018, let's say he was making $75,000 a year.
And that excludes your benefits,
that's
which
just
are
your
worth
salary.
30, 40, 50,000. Just saying.
So that means we're easily owe him, that we're going to be forced to pay him $40,000 for 2018, easily, right? Then you figure another 75 for 2019. This is assuming that he's only at 75,000. If he became he was a police officer and became a detective, there could be a salary bump there. And then this year, even if it's only half a year, we're in for at least another 40. So you're at $160,000 easily. And he has to get his job back. And we've already paid this woman who was coerced $45,000. And I don't know what's involved in legal fees and all, and the cost to the city to have to arbitrate this. And okay,
it's bad news. Let me ask you guys this: if we assume that the structure is that these people work for us, right?
Right,
so the government is supposed to serve our needs, and they're supposed to serve us. Then how, under any kind of system, are we as the taxpayers beholden to this situation where no one wants this guy on the force except this guy, clearly, and the union, and yet we have no power to do anything about that? I find that troubling, because that to me means that we are not in charge of this relationship at all. So the police are not beholden to the taxpayer, and that seems to be a problem.
Well, you have the things you can do as a viewer. You can elect people who are going to hold people accountable, who are going to look at union contracts and say, like at the city level, look at the aldermen. It matters when they look at a union contract and say, wait a minute, how about we don't put this little clause in there? And you need people at the state level who can pass legislation that maybe pulls back what is acceptable, because they're. And the problem is that this all comes down to federal law. The PELRB, which I always laugh to say, which is like the Public Employee Labor Relations Board, the PELRB, whatever, they're dictated by federal law. So good luck ever fixing it. But I do think we can do things at the state level to try to hold people more accountable. And somebody said to me, well, what about this woman? Maybe she was, maybe she's not the most credible. And I thought, okay, back up and don't look at all the details. Let's just look at superficial stuff. He made texts with his wife that clearly were inappropriate. I don't care if they're within your wife. They were not made to be jokes. Even if they were jokes, these are the things that you find funny. Then he supposedly was doing things, making deals with people on probation to keep them out of trouble. And then the one that's the icing on the cake is, so he lost his job in 2018. He sits home waiting for the union to fix it for him does not look for another job. He stays home for a year and a half, 2 years, waiting for the union to get him his back pay. What kind of person is that? Like, who does that? That's not the kind of people we need in government serving us, the people. I'm sorry, it just isn't. So anyways, that's my Labor Day irony story. Back to primary day, since we're doing this live, please make sure you get out there and vote. If you're an undeclared voter, you can choose a Democrat ballot or a Republican ballot. I would encourage you to take, if you live in Carla's district, wards 3, 4, 10, 11, or Goffstown, or if you live in CD1, please take a Republican ballot. Vote for Carla for New Hampshire Senate, and please vote for Matt Mayberry for Congress. We'll see how it goes. And then tomorrow we start the new race, because tomorrow's day one of the November election.
Fresh start.
In the meantime,
I might crack out a new Carla for Senate t-shirt.
In the meantime, COVID numbers are on the downswing. Rarely have we had new deaths in New Hampshire, and when we have, sadly, those are people in long-term care facilities, and they generally are like 80 or older. Not that we want to see anybody die, but it's not like it's running rampant through the community. Manchester has between 20 and 30 people on any given day out of 112,000 that actually have COVID. So don't let this consume your life. You have to get on with living, because life's too short.
Live free and thrive.
That's right. So that's all we got. Make sure you get out there and vote, and we will be back next week, and who knows what we'll talk about.
We'll see.
Enjoy the weekend. Bye.
Thanks, guys.